What's up, NAIA Report Nation? It's your boy Manny here. Welcome to another edition of The Report, NAIA Women's Basketball Podcast, episode 40. A lot to get into to start 2026. It's going to be a pretty jam-packed episode. Got a lot of games I wanted to touch on, both briskly and some deep dives into it. I got a segment of up down because again there were so many upsets that happened just this past weekend. I'm recording this Wednesday afternoon, so technically a lot of these Wednesday games, when you guys are watching this Thursday morning, a lot of these Wednesday night games that took place in some nice matchups to talk about. You know, obviously we've got a Taylor versus St. Francis in the Crossroads. We've got Receiving Votes Friends versus Sterling in the KCAC. So many different games that could be, and in my opinion, a lot of these are playoff previews, whether first round, second round, some of them maybe even being conference championship previews. But this episode will be focused on this past weekend, as well as two things that I wanted to keep people kind of let the people at home know. Keep it in mind, isn't news segment, so to speak, for this episode. But we're going to start with like I mentioned before, the up-down report, because this past Saturday specifically, but the entire just first weekend of basketball in the new year was surreal and something to really keep an eye on. Specifically on Saturday, 5 upsets. We're going to touch on all of them pretty much. And then there was one more additional upset that I wanted to talk about that happened the night before. Might have been Friday, if not Thursday, probably. I think it was Friday. But we're going to touch on all 6 of those upsets, and then we'll get into our Is This News segment with 2 things that I wanted to keep the people kind of an eye on. One that's a little under the radar, but another one that I'm sure people are kind of keeping an eye on themselves, especially out west. So we're going to start with the upset that I kind of saw coming. I did see this coming. Spring Arbor beats Receiving Votes Indiana Wesleyan. I'm not fully shocked by this outcome. I will say what the shocking part about it is that it came at Indiana Wesleyan, and up to that point, Indiana Wesleyan had been undefeated at home. They were a different team at home than they were on the road. It's just the way it works. It was just the way it is. So that was definitely the one thing I didn't see coming. Am I surprised Spring Arbor won? No. I'm just surprised it was at home. It was on the road at Indiana Wesleyan. Not saying that Spring Arbor can't win on the road. We know that, but it's more so how Indiana Wesleyan's been at home and what they've been able to do when in front of their home fans on their home court. So that's really why I was a little, taken aback. Again, not shocked. I don't think shocked is the right word. Just taken aback by it. But overall, Megan Zeitz continues to have an all Crossroads first team type of season. She had 19 points, 11 of them coming from the charity strike. She's pretty efficient in my opinion. As a whole, you saw the Cougars defense on full display. 40 turnovers are what the Wildcats were forced into. Only 9 of them were steals. So some of that was unforced errors, but at the same time, a shot clock violation, a bad pass, to a degree, while it might not go down as a steal, might not go down as a forced turnover, I think that those still kind of go into it, and it's no surprise that another game where Spring Arbor goes out and plays, their opponents have a high turnover total. So while yes, most of them were kind of unforced, for the majority of them, should be 22 turnovers, not 40. A majority of them were benefited from or were kind of started by that Spring Arbor defense that we've seen all the way through. I've said it before. I'm going to keep saying it. Spring Arbor is going to be a national tournament team. They're going to be a serious contender in the Crossroads. They are a national tournament level team. They should get in. That's when I'm recording this on January 7th. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out between them and the rest of the country. But they are definitely going to be a team that has a good case. And if they go do well on the Crossroads, they're really going to be a tough team to kind of have to deal with in that league. Speaking of the Crossroads, we're going to go over now to another one that I think was about as random as you can ask for. Bethel from Indiana specifically, still in the Crossroads like I mentioned, over number 20 Huntington. I didn't see it coming. I'm not going to lie to you. Nothing against Bethel, but I just didn't see it coming, especially at Huntington. Bethel used the third quarter to really separate themselves. It was 21-10 in that quarter. I think this is the first major upset of the Crossroads. Obviously, we've got Manny, who's undefeated. They just beat Taylor for the sole position of the number 1 seed. Taylor still being the second best team in the conference, in my opinion. Then you've got like a Spring Arbor and Indiana Wesleyan, the St. Francis. There's still a lot of teams in there, but we haven't really had an upset yet. And again, I don't really count the Spring Arbor game because, not too much of an upset, in my opinion. Spring Arbor is technically above them in the standings while they're not receiving votes like Indiana Wesleyan is. That's still, I don't think that they're really an upset or a major upset. This is a major upset for sure. This is one that we look back on at the postseason in the standings and the seeding. Maybe Huntington wants this one back. But like I mentioned, third quarter was really what made the difference in this game. The team shot better from three because they're more selective. And that's why I understand, you want to get up a high number of threes. You want to get up a good number, a good chance. Again, that 3-point line is a real weapon, but sometimes less is more. And I just feel like in this game, Bethel did more with less 3-point attempts. They went 6 of 15, which is 40% clip, compared to Huntington, who went 6 of 24. Both teams made 6, but that 6 feels different when it's 40% compared to 25%. And I think that's the other part of this game where Huntington kind of shot themselves in the foot and put themselves behind the 8 ball. You take away some of those 3-point shots. Now, I get it. Sometimes you're just not hitting. I'm not. If all 24 of those shots were good shots, we're in the flow of the offense, we're in transition, we're just open looks, you live with the results. Were all of them like that? Subjective, matter of opinion. But it's hard to say in any level of basketball that if you shoot 24 threes, all 24 of them are good shots. It's not realistic. Some of them are going to come at the end of the shot clock. Some of them are going to come good, not great. Some of them are going to have little things that could have been better, whatever the case is, but it's just hard to have good shots from a 3-point line on every single attempt. So I don't think I'm going to say that. So that's why I would say less is more in this game. And I think the 3-point line became a weapon because Bethel used it less and kind of went in different directions compared to Huntington. At the same time, Bethel then went really good from the free throw line. They went 80%, while Huntington went 63.6%. So now your better 3-point percentage from the 3-point line, specifically also because, and talking about 3-pointer, it was the same total. They both had 6 made threes for 18 points in that game. So it wasn't like a situation where if you told me Huntington shot 24 times, but they made more. They made 4 more. All right, cool. I can understand that. But it was the same amount. So for that, I think they overdid it a little bit. And now you're throwing that the free throw percentage disparity was that much, almost 20% difference. You can see how this game kind of opened up. And again, that third quarter was the real quarter where everything kind of went towards Bethel and Huntington just couldn't find their way back into this game. They also had 14 offensive rebounds, led by Jasmine Smith, who had 10 overall rebounds. So she was really a force on the glass, really a catalyst for this team, especially on that offensive rebound. I think she led the team in offensive rebounds with 5. She had exactly 5 and 5 to get her 10 total. Plus, you also have 3 players scoring double figure if you're Bethel. So overall, Bethel had a really good game. Now, am I sitting here saying Bethel is a sleeping giant in the Crossroads? No, I would need to see a lot more. But this goes to show you that the Crossroads is deep. The Crossroads is deeper than maybe in years past. I've talked to a few coaches about that. The Crossroads, yes, we've got talked about it at length. Marion's the bar. I don't care where they fall. If they go all the way to the bottom of the playoff picture, the Crossroads runs through Marion. It's just the way it works. It's the way it's honestly kind of been working and kind of trending in that direction. Then you've got Taylor, who has been the surprise team of the Crossroads this year, and rightfully so. They've earned that title of the second best team in the conference right now. I would probably go St. Francis. I think St. Francis has been a very good team throughout this entire run so far. Then I would go Spring Arbor. I do think Spring Arbor is the 4th best team in the conference. I'd probably look at a Huntington, Indiana Wesleyan. But now you've got teams at the bottom that, hey, Mount Vernon Nazarene, Bethel picked up a big upset here. You don't even know some of those teams at the bottom of the conference. They could shock somebody. They could take one. At the end of the day, when you're playing in the Crossroads, you are in one of the best, I'd say, top 4 conferences in women's basketball. So you cannot go into any game if you're the favorites in matchups thinking, oh, okay, well, we're not playing a ranked team today. We're not playing a playoff team today. We can take a day off. No, that's not the situation. I'm not saying that's what Huntington did in this game, but it just goes to show you that on any given night, when you're talking about basketball, it's 40 minutes. I've said it before. You could be the best team. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. Huntington is the better team, but for 40 minutes this past Saturday, that was not the case. And that's all it takes. 40 minutes of you not playing your best basketball could pull off an upset for the opponent. And credit to Bethel because while, let's say Huntington didn't play well, they didn't shoot the ball well from the 3-point line or the free throw line. They gave offensive rebounds opportunity over and over and over again to Huntington. They allowed Huntington offense to get multiple players involved. Like I mentioned, multiple double-figure scoring players. It's still on Bethel to go out and do that. You still have to hit those shots. You still have to convert those offensive rebounds. You still have to get those buckets to get to 10-plus points, and all 3 of you have to do it. So it's still a lot on Bethel, and I do think this was more of a Bethel win than a Huntington loss, in that I think Bethel had more control of the outcome than Huntington. I do think Huntington shot themselves in the foot in different aspects of the game that allowed Bethel to do this. But credit to Bethel for, again, the biggest upset so far in the Crossroads League this season. Now, I will jump over again. Got a lot of teams that I want. Got a lot of games I want to talk about. So I'm gonna go over now to. We'll go Oregon Tech and Lewis and Clark State. I think this one was a Cascade Classic. Number 20 versus number 15. Obviously, number 20 comes away with it. The first time, if I remember correctly, that Oregon Tech has beaten Lewis and Clark State at Lewis and Clark State. So big notch on the belt for the Owls. To be honest, it was a good game. Like, it was a really good game. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that I watched it. There were a lot of games going on that night, and so I couldn't catch that one, but I did catch the ending. Wow, what an ending. But from what I saw from the box score that I looked at from the few clips that I did see, it was a good game. It wasn't a bad game. It wasn't Lewis and Clark State did not have they shot the ball poorly. They did this. No, it was a really good game. It just came down to someone had to win, someone had to lose. There's no ties in basketball. I will say, though, if you force me to pick where this game was won or lost, I'm looking at the bench, look at the subs, look at the reserves. 14 bench points for Oregon Tech compared to 4 by Lewis and Clark State. And that number is even more amplified when you talk about the fact that the starters for Lewis and Clark State actually outscored the starters for Oregon Tech 58-51. So there's a world where Lewis and Clark State not only should have won this game, but could have won it by a couple points. It wouldn't have been a close game like it ended up being, but the bench, credit that to Oregon Tech, their bench came in and was able to keep them above water, so to speak. And the starters, while they lost the scoring margin in terms of the two starting units, it wasn't by a lot to where the bench was able to make up for it with obviously outscoring the Lewis and Clark State bench by 10 points. So what was the difference in the game? 3. That was literally the difference there. 7 points on the starters, but then 10 for the bench. That's where those 3 points come in. And obviously the game winner by Olivia, she was not, I don't know what the play call was. Sometimes just give the ball to your best players and let them work. It obviously is a heartbreaker because not only does Lewis and Clark State lose that game, but you lose it like that on an absolute 30-foot prayer. But I say prayer not in the sense of that she didn't know she was making it. She lined it up, got in her form. It wasn't a random throw it up and see what happens. The girl held that follow through, and that ball looked, I'm not going to lie, it looked good the second it left her hand. But obviously that makes it even more of a backbreaker. It was just the depth. The depth of this game is what helped Oregon Tech, and if this is the depth we're going to see moving forward, which is the depth, honestly, that's going to kind of make it or break it in the Cascade. Talked about in Eastern Oregon, in Oregon Tech, Lewis and Clark State, a Corbin, a Southern Oregon, whatever, even the teams that maybe we haven't talked too much about, like a Walla Walla or Warner Pacific, Bushnell, Evergreen, Northwest, I can go on and on. The bench and the reserves are really what I'm looking at because all these teams have really good starting fives. They all have really, especially the teams at the top, they have at least one player that can go off for a 20, 25-point performance on any given night. But like I've said in the past, that's going to cancel out with the other top scorer that's across the way. It's about the rest of the rotation, specifically the ones coming off the bench. And how deep can you go off the bench? Every coach in the country wants to say, hey, I can go 10 deep. I can do this. I can do that. But can you really? Can you really? And will you really? Because you can. Maybe you can. I think every coach says that. Less than half the coaches can actually do that. But even less than that, actually pull the trigger on it because it's hard. It's hard to be able to say that, go out and do it, especially if it's a conference game, if it's a big conference game, if it's a game where, your playoff seeding could be in implications, whether you're going on the road or you're going to be able to host. Maybe you could be the number 1 seed, whatever the case is. So I'm looking at the bench and the depth of the Cascade to really be the name of the game for whoever wins it, whoever keeps winning it, and whoever ends up coming out as the auto bid and the Cascade champion, both regular season and tournament for that matter. Now, we're going to head over to the biggest upset of the day. Hands down, no question about it. UT Southern Firehawks versus the number 1 team in the country, Bethel Wildcats. This is the top 2 upset of the season. The only other one was Don over Dort, obviously. Now, I think UT Southern is number 2 just because the Don, well, they both were actually on the road or at home. So I guess it doesn't really matter. I'm kind of torn. I've been trying to figure out which one I would give that number one upset of the season to. I really want to say UT Southern, but it might just be recency bias, so I'm going to let that marinate. But it definitely is 1 and 2. Those are the 1 and 2 right now when we're talking about these past number of upsets, honestly, this year already. We should have known something crazy was going to happen, though, because in that first quarter, it was 27-26. Bethel was winning, but it was a fire start for UT Southern, pun intended. So it kind of set the tone for the rest of the game. It was a 7-point game heading into the fourth, so it wasn't like, UT Southern had it. It wasn't like they were kind of going back and forth. I mean, for the most part, they were, but it was a 7-point game. That's multiple. That's at least a 3-possession game moving into the fourth quarter. But the fourth quarter was all Firehawks, because in that quarter specifically, you had a very noticeable difference in the scoring output of these teams. 28-15 behind 6 players who scored for UT Southern in that quarter. I'm talking about in that quarter right now. 76.9% from the field, 7 of 7 from the free throw line. UT Southern just got hot, and they ran it off. If there's one thing, and I'm going to continue talking about this game, but there's one thing I learned from Saturday, which everybody, especially if you follow basketball at any level, especially at this level, can agree with. I've said it at length. If you let teams hang around that you are quote-unquote better than, if you let the underdogs, if you let the teams who shouldn't be there in terms of they should not be this close this late into the game, that team will win, or at least have an opportunity to do it. I'll keep going back to the Grandview versus Mid-American Nazarene game earlier this year in the Heart. I had Mid-American Nazarene the favorite. They should have won that game. No question about it. But what did I say before that game? If it stays close in the first 38 minutes and it goes into overtime, Grandview will win. And that's what happened. It stayed close. Grandview didn't get in regulation. They got into overtime, and then they come out with the victory. Granted, it was also at home, but my point still stands. Same thing here. 7-point lead in this day and age of basketball, that's nothing. That's 3 stops, 3 threes. Hey, you're now losing by 2. So there's no way that you can really... I'm not fully surprised at how UT Southern was able to win this game late, because you let them hang around. You can't let these teams hang around. And UT Southern is a really good team. They're a bubble team, in my opinion. They're a team that could make the national tournament with an at-large bid. Their team is going to be a real contender in the Southern States this year. They've got ball players on that team, and you gave them confidence. You gave them life. This is what happens. Now, again, the drought that Bethel did go on. I mean, they got more attempts up than UT Southern in that quarter, but they went 3 of 15 from the field for 20%. I attribute that some of that to the Firehawks defense for sure. I'm not saying that Bethel was getting clean looks and just missing, but some of that was also, but even still, it's a momentum thing. It's a momentum thing. I've said it before. Basketball is probably the most momentum-driven sport I've ever played, I've ever seen in my own 2 eyes. Whether that's football, soccer, baseball, softball, whatever it is, I just feel like the momentum of in basketball, you can see it. Momentum is in every sport, don't get me wrong, but you can see it in basketball. You can see when a team is starting to turn the corner, when calls are going in their favor now, where the ball bouncing is going in their favor. Like, the basketball gods are a real thing. I'm telling you, they're a real thing. Y'all better pray to them every night, because they are a real thing. Those bounces that y'all see, it actually bothers me, and it kind of irks me a little bit. Might be a basketball pet peeve of mine. When someone says, "Oh, that was a lucky bounce," 2 things happen on that bounce. Either it was a lucky bounce, and hey, live with those. Or you have to look at the previous 3 possessions on both sides of the ball. If my team has had 3 bad offensive possessions in a row, but the other team has been able to convert, let's say, a transition bucket, a good half-court set, and another nice bucket. When that 4th possession comes down for them and they put up a prayer that's a lucky bounce, I don't see that as a lucky bounce. I see that as they're due for that, because they are building momentum for the previous 3 plays. And so now when they get that bounce, I'm not fully surprised. I'm not surprised. They've been playing better on both sides of the ball. They have the momentum in their favor now. The energy is shifting. I can literally see it shifting from us to them. So you can't fully just say, again, out of the 15 attempts, out of the 12 missed shots, I would say 2 or 3 probably wide open looks that Bethel missed, but the rest of them probably defense focused and the momentum driven kind of led to a lot of those misses, whether they're layups, threes, pull-ups, float, whatever it is. Whatever it is. I've said it before, in these games, as much as it's about the entire game, your rotation, like I talked about in the Cascade, for example, your defense, the offense, what kind of shots are you getting? Can you hold teams to one shot only? I got all that stuff, and I get that. But, if you've noticed, I've turned my narrative a little bit when it comes to these type of games, or this specific storyline, because we're getting closer to postseason time. As much as, and this is why I always also said earlier, the whole depth thing about every coach wanting to play that deep and all that kind of stuff, as much as that sounds great, and we all want to do that, at the end of the day, you start and end with your best players playing the best that they can in these moments. And that's what UT Southern did. UT Southern had their 4 best players go out there and play like their 4 best players. You had Rainey Reed and Lauren Smith. Both had near double-double performances. Literally, each were 1 rebound shy of the double-double. They combined for 26 points and 17 rebounds. I lied. 1 was off by 2. Can't do math. Sorry, guys. So 2 rebounds for 1 rebound for the other, and they get the double-double. Close enough, though. Then you go to Ashley Dickey, who showed why she might be the best offensive scorer in the Southern States. She had 24 points on 11 of 50 shooting. That's 55% from the field. She also chipped in 8 rebounds, 3 steals, and 3 assists. 3 steals and 2 blocks, excuse me. When you have your best players playing the best, that is, at the end of the day, what we're looking for. As coaches, as even players. You know, players got to always be realistic with themselves. Not everybody's role is to go get buckets. It's not. That doesn't mean you can't be a star in your role. Again, Raimi and Lauren just almost had near double-double performances, doing what they do best, being a presence in the paint, cleaning up all these offensive rebounds and defensive rebounding, and finishing defensive possessions for their team. And they were a big part in this. They don't win this. UT Southern does not win this game if they don't get 17 rebounds combined. They don't. Because I get it. Obviously, Ashley did get 8 rebounds, so I'm not saying she can't rebound the ball, but that's what, 35-ish rebounds? Quick math off the top of my head. You take away those 17, that's only 8. Right? So you had those 3 players check the boxes. And I said it before, I still think the best player on this team is Silky. And I don't know a better nickname for her because her game is just smooth like silk. She had 15 points, 12 assists, 6 steals, 7 of 11 from the field against the number 1 team in the country. When your best players do what they're supposed to do in being your best players and lead by example, will Silky ever lead the team in scoring? Probably game to game, depending on situation. But she's not the best scorer on that team. I give that to Ashley. But that I still think Silky is what makes this engine go for UT Southern and what makes them dangerous for me, if I'm being honest. 12 assists? She could have by herself could have given every bucket, every assist to Ashley. That's what we're talking about here. Basketball is a complete team game. Everybody knows that. But in these key matchups, in playoff games, late into the season, when we're talking about February and March, as much as it's about who's playing the best ball as a team, it's also about whose best players are ready for that moment. And I can take it away from the past few weeks. We've talked about friends in the KCAC. We've talked about, Raylan Garner stepping up for her team in a big matchup against the Columbia College Cougars. We've talked about situations where team players haven't stepped up, and it's cost their team. It's the price you pay for being the quote-unquote centerpiece of some of these offenses. So this is a really big game for UT Southern. I mean, it could be a game that really just it puts the season in a new light moving forward. When you're talking about Southern States, you're talking about, again, momentum. One game can change everything on both sides of the spectrum, good and bad. this is more of a Bethel of a UT Southern win than a Bethel loss. I'm not sitting here saying Bethel is no longer the team to beat. I've been very high on Bethel all year. I understand that Dort is the two-time national champions, defending national champions. I get all that. But something about Bethel I've been riding that wave all year since the summer. Y'all know this, and I'm going to keep riding it. I'm high on Bethel. But I'm also high. I've been high on UT Southern. So I truly believe this is more of a UT Southern win than a Bethel loss. I think UT Southern would have beat any team in the country the way they played that afternoon. It just so happened that it was Bethel that night. Just so happened that it was Bethel. This Saturday was a wake-up call for anyone who thinks we're still in 2025, who thinks we figured it all out. We haven't. 5 upsets in one night, and we didn't get to one. Well, technically the other 2, because they involve the same team. Because we're going to be talking about that in this next segment of Is This News? But before we get to that, and like I said, we're going to be talking about this next segment is going to be Is This News? Because I want to talk about 2 things that need to be brought to light because of what it might mean moving forward. We've talked about the upsets, so I'm going to take a quick break from the upsets and go to a team that did not win this past weekend, but they've done something again. Northwestern, is it news that they're a dark horse contender in the GPAC? Because there's only 2 games I'm looking at. They've had some tough losses. I get that. I'm not picking them as a dark horse contender. GPAC is really loaded. Dort, Briarcliff, Dakota Wesleyan, Concordia. I get it. But they are now have 2 games under their belt against top GPAC teams, specifically Dort and Concordia, that they've only lost by 1 possession. They lost this past weekend to Concordia by 2. They lost to Dort earlier in GPAC play by 2. Both were on the road, by the way. Just want to throw that out there. This Red Raiders team is due for a big upset in the GPAC. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's a matter of when, not if. It's going to happen. And I mean a big upset. I mean they are going to take down a giant in the GPAC. Could be in the regular season, could be in the postseason. That's my prediction for this team because you don't do this 2 times on the road against the number 2 team in the country right now and the number 9 team in the country right now. Both teams have been top 10 pretty much all year except for Concordia at the beginning of the year when they were kind of a surprise to everybody. But other than that, they've been top 10 the entire polls. You don't do that 2 times in the same season and pull it off the 3rd time. Like, you don't want to be that 3rd team. They still got Dort, I think, one more time. It could be Dort. They still got Dakota Wesleyan, I believe, another time. I think they're going into their 2nd round because it's the 2nd time they play Concordia, so they might be going through their 2nd round of GPAC play already. Briarcliff, I could see it happening. They're due for one. And the thing that I just wanted to bring it to light is because they're 2 very different games, the way they happen. For Concordia, it was 1 quarter that really changed it all because going into the 4th quarter, it was a 13-point deficit that was almost erased in that 1 quarter when they went 19-9 in favor of Concordia. The Red Raiders held the Bulldogs scoreless for almost 7 minutes in that quarter and went on a 12-0 run that set up the end of game situation, which ended up being Christine Velsmeyer blocking the layup attempt by the Red Raiders that I believe would have put them up by 1 point. I think it was a 1-point game at the time. Then free throws, late game situation, you ice the game. But they had, momentum. They had it. You're going to hear me say that word a lot, momentum, the vibe, the feeling, the energy. You're going to hear me say those words a lot moving forward for the rest of the season because that's all it's about at this point of the year. Yes, you're playing teams that you've known. For some of these coaches, they're playing the same coach for 5 years now. You know what they want to run. They know what you want to run. It's just a matter of who can run it better. Who can prepare better? Like, who can prepare these kids, these student athletes, these young ladies who maybe aren't used to it the first time you're running or whatever the case is, but how can I prepare them for what you're going to run when I know what it is? All that is true. But it's about, when people say we got to be playing the right ball at the right time, it's more so about who's playing the right ball in terms of energy. Who's got the good energy? Who's got the good vibes, the good momentum going into it for the next couple weeks? But back to that Concordia game, it showed me that this Red Raiders team is never down and out. Now, if you're banking on a 7-minute 12-0 run against a top 10 team in the country, I would not be a betting man in that situation. But you did it. Almost. So that's something to keep in mind. Then I went back to the Dort game. I was like, okay, what about the Dort game? How'd that go? High scoring. It was 71-73 at the end of the game on the road. In that game, the lowest quarter by anyone was 14 points by Dort. It wasn't even by Northwestern. Northwestern had 17 in the fourth quarter when Dort had 14. The largest quarter loss that game was by Northwestern. They lost the first quarter 24-17. And still took a Macy Sievers game winner to put it away on the go-ahead bucket. I'm sure Dort felt that game. I like this Red Raiders team because they're not your conventional type of team of like, oh, this is why. You're going to have a lot of teams where I like them because of this reason, that reason. Cool. But there's going to be some teams like Northwestern where I don't know why, but I just like them. If you force me to pick their outcome in the postseason, deep playoff run. I'm not calling them I don't even think they have a conference championship berth as of right now. We'll see if that changes as the year goes on. But they are, right now, the ceiling is a deep playoff run. I believe it's 8 teams to make the GPAC, so I'm looking at a second to third round situation. Trying to think. That's quarterfinals. No, that's first round, second round, third round with semifinals, I think it is. Trying to remember off the top of my head. But a deep playoff run. Semifinals for sure. I just don't know if I can go as far as saying conference championship appearance. And I wouldn't say conference champion just yet. This team also has, and a big reason that you can say they're like, I can't really find a niche for them right now. You look at the scoring side of things, right? Defensively, we see that they can do it. But the scoring side of things, in both of these games, they had at least one 20-point score, but they were different 20-point scores. Against Concordia, it was Margot Shootman with 29 points, and then Ashton Wobig with 20 for versus Dort. So the offense just kind of by committee, I'm not saying obviously you've got your leading scorer, and that's all every team has a leading score, but that doesn't always mean that it's run through them. We've had plenty of teams this year where no one scores over 15 a night or even 12 a night, but you've got multiple players that are scoring over 10 a night. Some people prefer that style. It's nothing wrong with it because now it also opens up the window of opportunity for on any given night, you can really say, oh, they might go off. If there is one thing, though, that I need more from this Northwestern team before we head to this last segment of Is This News, it's the first quarter. You got to give yourself a chance. In both of these games, they lost the first quarter by the most in that game. So what I mean by that is, in the first quarter of Dort, they lost by 7. In the first quarter versus Concordia, they lost by 5. Those were the two largest quarter deficits in that game for them. After that, it was either a 2 or 3-point difference. It was a 1-possession situation in the other, 6 quarters. But in the first quarters of these two games combined, you lost by 12 points. Too many points to give up and try and come back from against top teams in the GPAC. So I'm a believer. Like I said, I think they're going to get an upset in the GPAC. But you got to give yourself a chance for that upset. You got to give your chance for that upset. The first 10 minutes is just as important as the last 10 minutes. So if they come out 1 possession in both of those games, they might win that game. They save a 3 there. Now it's a tie game. They save a bucket there. Now it's a 1-possession game. Now it's a little bit different. So I just think that's the only thing I would say. Because if they win those first 2 quarters, or even if it's closer, you still lose, but you lose by 1 possession. They could be sitting here 2-0. And like we talked about, Northwestern Raiders having a win over Dort and Concordia in the same season. It's a possibility. It's a real possibility. Last thing we'll talk about here, and then I will send you guys into the weekend. Loaded weekend, by the way. Loaded weekend. I'm not going to talk about any of those weekend games right now. I don't want to take this episode too long, but just know plenty of games if y'all want to catch them out. Plenty of conference games you want to catch out. You couldn't go wrong. The only thing going wrong is not looking at them. keep an eye on those conference games this weekend. The last thing I wanted to bring to light, which again, I don't know how much light I'm bringing it because I'm sure some people are paying attention, at least out in the West Coast. Is Dakota State slipping? They're on a 2-game losing streak in the Frontier. And I talked about this in our episode, I think a week ago now, where, I was doing the regular season championship kind of watch with all those conferences that have 10 or more teams. You get 2 auto bids, regular season and tournament champions. So I was looking at those conferences. I'm not gonna lie, some of these takes have not aged well. Dakota State is probably the one that I'm thinking we're all thinking about, though, because I strictly had them being the favorites in the bar in the Frontier. Talking about them, at the same time, I did say, will they get got? Will the Frontier get them? Right? I don't think there's a team that has Dakota State's number, but the conference as a whole has proven to be unpredictable this year. You lost number 24 Carroll and number 17 Rocky Mountain. Both games were by 1 possession, 2 to Carroll, 3 to Rocky Mountain, and both were on the road. I don't think Dakota played bad, though, so I wouldn't say they're slipping, but they seem vulnerable. You definitely got to right the ship soon, because now you're staring at the barrel of a 3rd seed. You're staring the barrel at a 4th seed a lot more than you are the 1st seed. Now, you still have the Montana Tech game in the horizon. That is going to be huge, because if you win that game, you're back in contention. But a Montana Tech win there, hey, let me tell you something, y'all folks. It'll be Montana Tech's to lose now. They don't seem like they're going to be stopping anytime soon. They're not slowing down. They've got a favorable schedule moving forward. Now, again, a lot of these games are not going to be going on the road, so how do they do on the road is going to be the biggest question. But for Dakota State, you're still in the 2 hands are still on the steering wheel. You're still at 10-2. You could even be at 12 by yourself if you wanted to. You're that comfortable. But don't get it twisted. There's some lights coming behind you. There's some noise coming behind you. These teams in the Frontier, Carroll and Rocky Mountain, I've gone at them in length, to be honest, if we're being real, about some of these upsets that they've had against them in the early part of the year, in the fall. They turned that around real quick. Both of them getting wins over Dakota State. All right, so now they're back in the running. Hey, guys, we're still here. You still got a Providence in there. You still got some of these teams at the bottom that have already proven to be able to upset some of these teams at the top. Now, their lower scoring games by Dakota State standard, okay, 63 and 52 is not what they normally put up, right? So you can always throw this up to rough shooting. But if we look at the numbers, I really don't think so. For the Rocky Mountain game, it was a lot of poor shooting and just maybe a bad offensive night as a whole, because 26.5% from the field and 17.6% from a 3-point line for Dakota State. Compare that to 39.3 for Rocky Mountain plus 29.4 from a 3-point line. It feels like a bad night. But again, Rocky's defense is pretty good, but it does feel like a bad night. From a scoring standpoint, though, Dakota State has 7 scorers. That was one more than Rocky, who had 6. The assists, 10 to 15. It was pretty even. I just think the Bears were led by their post player in Isabella Hagam, who for the past 3 games now is averaging 16 rebounds exactly, and capped it off with this game with the season high 20. I think they were just more physical. I think Rocky Mountain just kind of imposed their will a little bit more. And again, we're talking about a Rocky Mountain team, and Carroll for that matter, who their backs are kind of against the wall here to a degree. Because like I said, you have teams, and I talked about it, I don't know if it was with Amaya earlier this year when we were doing the Frontier episode, or if it was just a solo one, but I remember saying, when we talk about the Frontier, 2 of the top 25 teams in the country were below receiving votes and unranked teams in the standings at one point. So I'm sure Carroll and Rocky Mountain had, felt some little pressure. So I could see them coming out and wanting to send a message. And message sent, message delivered. Red Receipts was on. I read that message. Again, I know Coach Sean, he had them comfortably in there. To be honest with you guys, I didn't, just because resume. But hey, resume looks real nice now. Now you got to keep going, obviously, but resume looks real good right about now. As for the Carroll game, I think that was more of a Carroll win than Dakota State loss. I think It literally came down to the last possession. And I watched that game. I watched that whole game from start to end. Watched that last execution. I watched Dakota State almost steal that game. Because if Dakota State would have, this is how much of that game was was more Carroll. If Dakota State would have pulled off the win in those last few minutes, I would have been sitting here telling you guys that was a steal. That was more of a Carroll loss than a Dakota State win, because Carroll had the lead late. They had plenty of opportunities to ice it, take care of the ball, hit your free throws, get stops, get like 2 more stops, then you win the game, like all that stuff. Stop helping off the shooters. But you didn't. And now Dakota State, they tie the game. They got all the momentum. They get a turnover. There was just so much going on in that game. But the Saints did come out with the win. They pulled it out. They survived. If I'm being honest, they survived. It was a win until those last few minutes when Dakota State turned it on, and it became a survival for Carroll. I think Carroll wins that game in large part. They had the last possession, which, again, credit to them. They did good clock management. They were able to execute, and they were able to do what they needed to do to have the last possession, which is often what you want. You just want the ball at the last possession, try and win it. That's all you can ask for in any game. Again, they made more plays down the stretch. If you look at the box score, if you zoom it out, you just look at the numbers. Carroll had 3 players, double-figure score. Dakota only had 2. Now, 2 players for Dakota State did finish with 9 each. So you look at that. Each of those players get 1 more point. It's a tie game now going into overtime. And if it would have gone to overtime, I do think Dakota State wins that one, because, again, I could tell by the way the team was playing, they saw it. Like, they could see the win. They were getting ready to celebrate a big win for them. And then all of a sudden, it was just going left hard. Going left. Dakota State hitting big shots, getting stops, forcing turnovers, shots missing for Carroll, whatever the case is. So I could see it. Now, it was a really big game for Jillian Kanduch. She had a season-high 24 points on 7 of 13 shooting, 3 of 6 from the three-point line, and 7 of 8 from the free throw line. She was a really big reason for this win, and what ended up being a big, W for Carroll. I believe Willa Allback was the one that hit the game winner. Great execution out of the timeout. Again, sometimes you just got to high pick and roll situation, get your best player going downhill, get into wherever she likes to get to her sweet spots. And again, it wasn't an easy shot. It was definitely a tough shot with some defense in front of her. But it was obviously a big win for Carroll. I'm going to wrap this up by saying this. 2026 has had a start. And we're only in the first couple days. Haven't even hit a week yet. And it's only going to get crazier after this past Wednesday night. Again, for me, it hasn't happened yet. For y'all, it did. Understand, and this is a PSA to all the players more so than anything. Whatever you did in the fall means nothing in January. We talk about February and March being when you want to play your best ball, being the best time of the year, all that stuff. And it's true. But in my 6 years now, being a part of this world, in the coaching side of things, at all levels, playing all levels, I can say with certainty, moving forward, that while I believe February and March are what matter, it's January. January is the month that you want to be playing your best ball. Because no one in the country, whether you're the number 1 team in the country or the worst team in the country, nobody can flip it on in February if you didn't already have it on in January. You came off the break. You got rest. You got recovery. Your mind is right. Your body is right. We're as right as it will be. No one's 100% right now. Everybody's got a nick or a bruise or something. But January is what really matters. Because if you don't have a good January, you will not even get to have a good February. If you have a good January, you set yourself up for February, and then we can talk about the rest of the months. January is the month that you want to really have everything hitting on the right note, hitting in the right directions. I say this 7 days into the month because that's how important it is. We've done a week of the month, and I'm already feeling like it's different. I can feel it in the air. I can feel it when I'm watching these games. Teams know subconsciously the season's here. We're past the halfway point. You know, all of us like to say the Thanksgiving break is the Christmas break, they have the halfway point. Benchmark, probably a better word I would use for it. We're in the home stretch, y'all. After the 31st of January, you got maybe 1 week of conference games left, and then we're here, postseason time. For many teams, it's a sprint now until we get to the national tournament, of course. And even then, it might still be a sprint, just a longer distance. So understand, to all the players out there, to all the fans out there too, January is the month we're really talking about when we say play your best ball, in January. Because you cannot play your best if you haven't been doing it already. No one can flip a switch on in February if it wasn't already on in January. Remember that. But that's going to do it for this episode 40. We've done 40 episodes, y'all. 40 episodes. We're going to hit 50, obviously. I don't know how many more episodes we're going to get to before the end of the season. Got a lot of things working up. Got a lot of things that I can't wait to share with you guys. But that's going to do it for this episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. And we will catch y'all in the next one. Peace.